What was the cringiest thing you did in your first relationship? Not safe for work. We planned, to the minute, when our first kiss would be. Not too bad, right? We were both nervous and it was both of our first relationships. I made a website with a countdown clock. Was walking her home anticipating kissing her for the first time at her doorstep and kept licking my lips because I didn't want to kiss her with a dry mouth. Halfway to her house she looks at me and says, "Stop doing that." I realized I probably looked really creepy. Never talk when we actually saw each other but texted constantly when we weren't in the same room. I wrote the girl a poem. It included the phrase, "slightly too large nose," and also used the word Kmart. Edit, since there's been a little response to this, I tried to think back on how the poem went. It was something like this: with your slightly too large nose and your great big heart, a love like this can't be found at Kmart. Well, she said that she thought we would be better off just being friends, so I decided that I needed to do some big grand gesture to prove my love. It always worked in the movie, so what could go wrong? I practiced singing the song for weeks on my ukulele and figured that I would wait until after her softball practice was done and surprise her. I sang "You're Beautiful" by James Blunt. It's a freaking miracle anyone talked to me after that. Edit, getting a lot of questions, so I'll try my best to answer most of them and keep it short. I wasn't a terrible singer, but I wasn't good. It didn't help that I added intentional breaks in my voice to make the song more emotionally powerful or something dumb like that. After I was done and stood in horror as her friends laughed at me and she stormed away, I kind of did a sad George Michael-esque walk in the rain to my car as I contemplated what would be easier, moving school districts or just driving off a cliff. We were not friends after that. It was super embarrassing for her and everyone teased her for months by signing James Blunt songs to her. I definitely had it worse, but high school kids are dicks. It also didn't help that about 2 weeks after we were assigned as lab partners and she raised her hand and asked the teacher if she could switch partners and the whole class snickered. It seems sweet reading the story, but really it was super creepy and I put her in an impossible spot. If anything positive came from it, I never had any troubles approaching women at bars etc. because I already knew what the worst possible thing that could happen was, so it was only uphill from there. We took a break and I posted a video to Creep by Radiohead with the caption, "For that special someone." I almost cringed off my chair writing this. How are you still alive? I matured as an individual, wasn't my finest moment. First real girlfriend in high school, we used to talk over the voice calls on MSN Messenger late at night. She wanted to just hear my voice, and I very quickly ran out of things to say, so she said I should just read whatever book I had around. She spent the next 30 minutes listening to my "Your New Gateway Computer and How to Use It" booklet. I was 17. We had just had a fight. I drove to his house and blasted "Scars" by Papa Roach from my car and just stood awkwardly at the end of the driveway waiting for him to come out. I really wish this weren't true. Told her I loved her within the first 24 hours at the school parking lot. Classic schmarsby. I was 17/18's first GF gave me a BJ, I was still a virgin. I kissed her right afterwards, not thinking she still have a mouthful of cum. Yeah, snowballed. Anyways, this lead her to believe I liked that. So she did it to me repeatedly. Keep in mind this is 93/94, so no internet to realize this isn't normal. I also grew up really freaking sheltered. After about 4/5 months I finally tell her, "Could you spit it out before kissing me?" She responds, "Oh, I thought you liked it. I always thought it was weird." Probably got snowballed 20 times or more in that time period. TLDR, first GF snowballed me. I didn't mention I didn't like it for 4/5 months. Edit, answering some questions. Glad everyone got a laugh. What did I do? You know what I did. I live in infinite shame with where the cum ended up. Why did I kiss her right after? First orgasm with a girl ever at that point. I was in love and did something out of passion. Sex ed was not taught in my household and barely at my school. We weren't having penetrative sex for the first 6 months or so, that's why so much oral. She was petrified at the thought of pregnancy. I grew up with an antenna and 3 channels. No cable, no VCR until I was 15/16. So very little exposure to media at that point. I was basically an invertebrate then. I was terrified of almost everything. That's why I didn't speak up. Let my mom purchase custom matching airbrushed shirts of 2 people kissing, with my girlfriend and my name on them. Back in 8th grade, I could not wrap my head around the obvious signals he was giving me that he was not as into the relationship as I was. I was extremely clingy and would draw doodles of us and write the mushiest notes to him on the daily. I would quiz him on what he liked about me on AIM every night, fishing for compliments from him constantly, making up a new pet name every week. My best friend was dating his best friend, who most likely felt the same reluctance due to the intensity, and we would arrange double dates that were mostly me and her trying to find a way to corner the boys and make out, which was extremely creepy behavior, looking back on it. Reading my journal from that year is horrifying. Wish I could go back and apologize for the cringe. If you're reading this, sorry about that shit Michipoo. After I saw Eric propose to Donna on that 70s show, I went out and got a 25-cent ring from the local Pizza Hut and proposed. At school, in front of everyone. I was 16. She wanted to give me my first blowjob, which I was all for. I was unsure of etiquette, so I didn't give any warning for the finale. It caught her by surprise. She choked, had an asthma attack from it. All I could do was pat the top of her head a couple times and say, "Thanks, champ." He French kissed me after eating a bacon double cheeseburger with onions and all sorts of other stinky stuff. I told him I had a bad experience with French kissing with a guy before him. Lies, he was my first kiss obvi, and I would appreciate if he never did it again. Bonus cringe, I rubbed vapor rub near my eyes to make myself cry when I broke up with him and told him I was overwhelmed and needed to focus on school. I was in 8th grade. Had my first relationship at age 17, we were each other's first for everything. Basically only ever gave him handjobs cause he wasn't very hygienic. He insisted on keeping his underwear on, so I'd have to rub him over his boxers. He'd come inside his boxers and then leave them on for the rest of the day. The odd time he didn't have boxers on, he'd grab a sock and come inside of it and throw it in the laundry pile. His mom did all the laundry. So disgusting every time I think about it. She started to ignore me at school. This was like maybe 1 or 2 weeks after we started dating. I called her house like 6 or 7 times one afternoon after school until her mom picked up, who was basically furious because I had been calling. I explained to her that Alexa was ignoring my calls. I hear in the background, "Alexa, why aren't you answering the phone?" To which she responds, "Because he's weird and he just keeps calling." I hung up the phone and went to my room. I carved her name in my wall with a pen. I still cringe about it to this day. She showed me a topless pic and I was too embarrassed to look at it. This thread has made me aware people were doing a lot more serious fricking in HS than I was. I always suspected as much. Gave away my favorite blanket from childhood. Literally the dumbest cringiest thing I have ever done. I miss that blanket. I hit my girlfriend with my car. It was a complete accident. We are still friends and it is a story that still comes up in conversation every now and then. I was too immature to talk about us one day having sex, so I'd giggle and say, "Do you know?" I was super shy back in the day and I really liked this guy who had weirdly flirted with me in one of our classes. He told me I looked like some random celebrity when I wore my hair down and how hot she was, so I never wore my hair up again for the entirety of school. I replied later by slipping a note in his locker but didn't sign it. A few days after that, I threw in a t-shirt I thought he would like. He didn't know who it was from until weeks later when he finally wore it to school to see if anyone said something. My BFF at the time did and he realized it was me. Super creepy on my end. We ended up dating for a day before we broke up because we were stupid kids. Now, 15 years later, we reconnected and are now married. So, totally worked as planned. I licked her face to be random. God, that hurt to reimagine. Please don't mention hybridized eating utensils. I accidentally sent me ex's dad a dick pic. Did he send one back? Sadly no. Broke it off because I thought I was a stud. I was single about 3 years after that. My first make-out session with someone was with my first girlfriend. We were in her bedroom, turned out the lights and went at it on the floor of her room. After a while I feel something wet on my face. I didn't want to stop, so I just ignored it and carried on. She notices it too and decides to turn on the light because something is really wet on our faces. Light comes on and turns out I'd had a massive nosebleed and there was blood everywhere. I was covered in it, she was covered in it, and there were blood stains all over her room. If that wasn't embarrassing enough, when she went to the bathroom to clean up, her mum caught her in the hallway. She sees the blood and immediately screams. Her assumption was that I was beating her daughter up and I get chucked out the house. Took a long time and explaining for me to show my face there again. Also lost my virginity to the same girl to cool and the gang celebrate. That was cringy as hell too. Used to write Naruto and Harry Potter fanfiction for my first girlfriend back in high school. Just typing that out fills me with renewed shame. Broke up with her because my best friend told me to. We were perfectly fine together, but I guess I kinda worshipped the guy and his advice. He later tried asking her out when we split. We were all 14 to 15. My first girlfriend had really big tits and I remember sucking and lightly biting her nipples for a long time and she finally said, "You know, I'd rather kiss you." I overstayed my welcome at the memory party. The letters I've wrote. Oh, those letters. 15-year-old me thought he was deep and romantic. He wasn't. I hope they don't exist anymore. My roommate finally got her first boyfriend just before her 40th birthday. She sent him flowers at work on her birthday. He cancelled his date with her that night, and I had to stay up all night with her crying. After the first date of going to the movies, I never put my arm around her because I was too scared. We sat in my driveway, and she didn't say goodnight because she was waiting for me to kiss her. I did nothing, so she finally kissed me. In defense mode, I licked my lips all the way around with my tongue like Scooby-Doo does with the cotton candy in the theme song intro. I even did the re-hee-hee-hee-hee. Kill me. Mistrusted a fart and sharted big time, which ended me saying, "My mom needs me. Goodbye." Then running off and leaving her in the dust. Was walking her home in our neighborhood. She says her parents aren't home. I say, "Cool, you have the whole house to yourself," and walked back home, wondering if I'd ever get a chance to touch her boobs. I got us matching dog tags with our anniversary on it after dating for around 6 months and would secretly get very sad when he wouldn't wear his. Declined staying the night because I was, and I quote, "wearing a skirt and didn't want it to ride up while I was sleeping." I used to take laps around the playground and slap stickers on her ass. I don't know what I was thinking. He took me to Olive Garden and bought me that meat lovers lasagna. I'm pretty damn sure that's what it is called, and when we got back to his place I wanted to show him how appreciative I was, so I gave him my first blowjob. Turned out I was not ready for that job and threw up the entire lasagna on his penis. God help me, I can't believe I'm finally sharing this story. I remember the first time we held hands. She played football on her school team, so I made some comment about how even though I have bigger hands, I still find holding the ball kind of awkward and asked her to show me how she held it. It was an elaborate ruse to make her hold her hand up, so I could compare hand size and not so smoothly lace fingers as we put our hands back down. It was kind of cute, minus the fact that I was sweating so much that she took her hand back 5 seconds later to wipe my sweat onto her pants. She was a good sport and held my hand again though. Tried to defend her honor. I got the shit kicked out of me by 3 guys. I earned cred for taking a beating, but she thought we should just be friends after witnessing that. We met playing WoW. She was level 60 and volunteered to run my character through Scarlet Monastery while I was leveling. Her entire family referred to me as White Rabbit when I was not around, because that was my WoW char name. We finally had sex when at a party at my friend's house whose parents were home. The mother knocked on the door and said, "What is going on?" We did not stop. A girl that I was about to start dating mentioned she really wanted to go to New Zealand at some point in her life, to a group of people, not even just to me, so I immediately priced plane tickets and lodgings to New Zealand for a honeymoon. Then, unbelievably, before we had actually started dating I told her I had priced our honeymoon. My defense was that if things did work out, New Zealand was so expensive I'd have to start saving then. We still dated, but only for about 2 months and neither of us have been to New Zealand. I had honestly forgotten this until I read this question. First date to a movie. We see Titanic, because that can only end well. We, as horny youngsters, aren't watching the movie, but instead making out and moaning in probably the 3rd row of a packed theater. I'd never made out before, I assumed moaning was involved. So cringy and gross. We leaned for a smooch and my mouth swallowed half of his face. I was so nervous on the way home. Being 14, his dad drove us to my house to drop me off. I leaned over to kiss him on the cheek. A quick peck and then I threw up his mom's fajitas all over myself. I got my best friend to break up with him for me. I'm so ashamed, sad face. I broke up with him on the phone while my best friend was on the another phone giggling and writing cue cards of what I should say. The real reason I broke up with him? He forgot to flush his poop at my house. I wasn't going to share this, but let's commiserate. Started dating 3 months before sophomore year ended. Once summer started I completely ghosted her. Skipped to first week of junior year, I thought we were still together. You can imagine how she reacted when I approached her for a kiss. The shame is still real to this day. Talk on the phone every night until one of us fell asleep because I wanted to hear you breathe. Asked her why she was dating me. Zero confidence will do that to a boy. Moment I'll never forget, watching a movie with first girlfriend in my bedroom. I'm feeling frisky and start touching her. She moans a little and turns toward me, keeping her eyes closed. I take off her clothes, shirt, pants, bra, then she turned towards me and says words I'll never forget, "Morning baby. WHYTHE frick am I naked?" The lady was asleep the entire time. Thank God I didn't try anything else except undressing her. Made an account just so I could finally tell this cringeworthy story. High school girlfriend and I used to make out on her bed with the door locked while her parents were out there under the impression we're studying. Heavy kissing, and at some point she says, "Cut that out, your breath stinks." Start kissing her neck and she slowly wraps her legs around my thigh. Couple minutes later starts breathing heavily. Couple minutes after that her legs tighten around my thigh. Couple minutes after that, she suddenly goes rigid, eyes roll up till I see whites, rapid breathing, exhaling heavily. I panic, and this is my retarded thought process: since all the blood's left my brain, she's choking. I should give her CPR. But she said no kissing her mouth, so I close my lips around her nose and blow it like a trumpet. She starts coughing immediately, but she's too polite to cuss me out, says she needs a drink of water and leaves the room. We continued to go out for 6 years after that. I broke up with this chick and had told her the days before that I had really liked her. We made out and gave each other massive hickeys, so I got super embarrassed and had to end it after the whole school was laughing their asses off. I told her I'm sorry I lied and that I had a problem lying and that my parents were sending me to a psychiatrist to talk about why I always lie so much. So yeah, I lied about lying. His mom came to pick him up while we were in Walmart with our group of friends, so we awkwardly kissed goodbye at the entrance to the store. We were 14. I cringe at many things in that relationship. Not exactly a relationship, but this boy I liked in 7th grade passed me a note that asked, "Do you have a BF?" I had been homeschooled before that and didn't know that BF stood for boyfriend, not best friend, and I enthusiastically wrote back, "No, I don't have a best friend." He read the note, slowly looked at me, and then never really talked to me again. It makes me cringe to this day, and my boyfriend makes fun of me for it, haha. Went way overboard on her birthday, when we'd been dating for 3 to 4 weeks. My first relationship was with a girl I never met IRL and had just talked a few times and played a few LOL games with her. I called her sweetheart in game and told all my friends about her. I later found out she wasn't exactly my type, big surprise, and kinda ghosted her. I was just like 16 at the time, but I still hardcore cringe when I remember. Not just because of the relationship itself, but also because of the fact I ghosted this girl that I told all my friends, and her, that I really liked. Teenage years are the cringiest shit ever. I almost completely erased this memory. So I was young and I had my first boyfriend. We were experimenting sexually and I really wanted him to think my pussy tasted nice, so I would literally rub strawberry freaking flavored lip gloss in my vagina. There's no way he didn't know. I thought it was such a genius idea that I had to share it with my fellow women, so I wrote it down and passed a note in class to one of my friends. It dropped on the floor and all the boys read it and screamed laughing. Strawberry Lips was my new name and I cried for a week. This was with a girl I dated in high school. My dad was getting drunk at a block party, so I got the idea to take his ski boat and go for a romantic boat ride. So we park in the middle of the lake, start making out and stuff. We notice our feet getting wet. The boat was sinking, so I start freaking out, bailing water out with cups, sopping it up with my t-shirt and wringing it out of the boat, just freaking panicking. Right after I accept the fate of my dad's $12,000 inboard motor ski boat and calm down, I remember that I didn't put back the drain plug before dropping it in the water, so I replaced it, drove back. I met the love of my life at age 17, aka I started getting my brains freaked out for the first time. She was not shy talking about her prior boyfriend who had a super huge cock that she claimed was very painful. Of course there were other details about their relationship that she shared, too. And she was complicated and we had a lot of fights which I couldn't get my head around. At some point I decided it would be a good idea for him and me to talk and compare notes. So I wrote him a letter proposing this. Mutual friends reported that he was utterly flabbergasted by this. But he approached me and said, "What would you like to talk about?" I think I babbled for 20 minutes after that, but I have no further recollection. Looking back, WTF was I thinking? My phone at the time was about to run out of storage. This was 2008, and I had to delete all the saved texts I had from him that included some really cheesy sweet ones, and some dirty ones. So I wrote them each down one by one on little pieces of notebook paper, laminated them, and hid them inside a Jonas Brothers book, so I would always have them. Apparently I must have forgotten to get rid of them when I moved out, because my 20-year-old sister found them last week. She called me in tears laughing and I told her, "Please, if you love me at all, just throw them away and forget you saw anything." This was back in like 4th grade. It was Valentine's Day and she had already given me her gift, a cute little heart pillow thingy she made herself. I was going to give her the old classic, chocolate in a heart-shaped container. My mom had bought it for me to give her. I struggled to find a good time to give it to her, because recently my teacher had doubled down on eating candy in class and was going to confiscate any they could find. Time was running out, the day was almost over. What did I do? I ended up never giving it to her. The fear of getting yelled at by a teacher was overwhelming me. I let that chocolate stay in my bag for a couple of days before confronting my mother about it, asking if I could eat it since it would spoil otherwise. She gave me the most disappointed yes in my whole life. I ate that chocolate. I still feel terrible about it. We broke up not long after. I was an awful boyfriend. Granted, I was 9 years old, but still. We got into a huge fight over a board game in front of some dinner guests. The relationship was not going well. One of us left the house in a huff. We had a door that locked from the inside and you needed a key to open it, and all keys had left the building with the huff. Our guests climbed out of the window of our second-floor apartment using bedsheets. That was 20 years ago and I still cringe when I think of it. Obviously the dinner guests never spoke to us again. We were young, but still.